This world is full of amazing and beautiful things in their simplicity.
A sunrise in the morning, a night sky far away from the city.
The quiet sound of wind when everything around you goes still. However, while we look up at the sky and admire the beauty of existence, there is another side of reality, one we often choose not to see. A darkness, most often not born from nature, but from humanity itself. Sometimes, in order to truly understand the world we live in, we have to look into its darker side. That is why today, on Top 2 Day, we're checking 10 documentaries that don't just show reality, they change your perception of it. If you're ready, let's begin with number 10. Number 10, Tickled 2016. Do you have your own fetish? Just kidding. There is no need to write it in the comments. Tickled is a true crime investigative documentary directed by David Farrier and Dylan Reeve that explores a very strange and even disturbing fetish known as competitive tickling, or rather a fetish among some wealthy people, presented that way to avoid any problems. Something that looks harmless at first, but turns out to be much more disturbing underneath. By the way, you can check this documentary on YouTube. So, New Zealand journalist David Farrier lived a fairly quiet life, producing what are often called fluff pieces for local television. Light, harmless segments where he would ask quirky questions to elderly farmers, eccentric characters, or even a touring Justin Bieber. That all changed when he stumbled upon videos of competitive tickling. Young men in sportswear, tied up and engaging in unusual activities, seemed strange, but still within the bounds of a potential report about the, well, diversity of human hobbies. Little did he know that trying to contact the organizers would spiral into an investigation with a distinctly unsettling, almost serial killer movie vibe. Soon, bizarre, almost Lynchian characters begin to appear. Lawsuits, threats, staged tickling performances, one of the most disturbing scenes, by the way, and stories involving blackmail and a desire for control. Looming in the background is a mysterious antagonist with vast resources and a mind that seems to have long gone off the rails. To be honest, the film is creepy, funny, and not funny at all at the same time. The film Tickled was often criticized for building such a powerful story, only to seemingly end without a proper conclusion. That's not entirely true. The story became so intense that HBO later released a separate 20-minute follow-up. It's recommended to look up the real ending of the story after watching the original film, since I'd rather not spoil it here. The follow-up part is also available on YouTube. At the end of the film, you'll understand that this was never really a sport, and it was never even about the tickling. It's about power, control, and harassment. It's about one person's twisted obsession and just how far it can go. A well-deserved 10th place. Number 9. Capturing the Friedmans, 2003. Capturing the Friedmans is a 2003 documentary directed by Andrew Jarecki that explores the case of the Friedman family, where both the father and his son were accused of child abuse. What makes the film so unsettling is not just the case itself, but the way it is presented. The director deliberately leaves out certain details and shapes the narrative in a way that raises more questions than it answers. As a result, despite the strong editing and soundtrack, the story seems to take the side of the Friedman family, omitting certain facts and even showing sympathy toward them, while attempting to justify actions that I believe do not deserve any leniency. In 1987, a man named Arnold Friedman was caught receiving CSAM in the mail from Amsterdam. When police searched his home, they found additional illegal material, as well as a classroom setup in his basement. They later discovered that he taught computer classes to children, so investigators questioned the students, who made various abuse allegations not only against Arnold, but also against his 18-year-old son, Jesse. Father and son were charged with multiple crimes and ultimately pleaded guilty. Arnold confessed to offenses involving 41 children, providing detailed accounts to detectives of how he carried them out, including the use of certain computer games to distract the children. However, criticism intensified as Jarecki's choice not to pursue his firm belief in the Friedmans' innocence became publicly known. There was also a critical backlash due to footage Jarecki left out on purpose. The film omitted a third defendant in the case, Ross Goldstein, a teenage neighbor who turned state's evidence and corroborated some of the children's accusations. Additionally, Jarecki left out a tearful confession of guilt that Jesse Friedman made from prison on Geraldo Rivera's talk show in 1989. During the interview, he also described how his father had done terrible things to him when he was a child. Also, I found one small strange thing. I want to hear your opinion on it. Maybe it doesn't mean anything? Andrew Jarecki's father is a psychiatrist named Henry who was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. On June 3, 2024, a woman who says she was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein filed a lawsuit against Jarecki, accusing him of sex trafficking, after Epstein allegedly sent her to Jarecki for psychiatric treatment in 2011. The same woman voluntarily dismissed her civil lawsuit in April 2025. A note from Jarecki was also included in Jeffrey Epstein's birthday book. Well, I never thought we'd be talking about Epstein on this channel. Is that unsettling enough? If not, let's take a look at something even more terrifying. Number 8. Jonestown, The Life and Death of People's Temple, 2006. This is already the third time we are talking about the Jonestown tragedy on this channel. Jonestown Massacre, The Life and Death of People's Temple, 2006, is a documentary about the most horrifying cult tragedy in history. It shows the rise and collapse of a community that initially presented itself as a progressive social movement, built around equality, solidarity, and trust, but in reality, gradually became increasingly isolated, controlled, and feared from within, and ultimately dominated by the absolute will of one man, Jim Jones. Jim Jones was the leader of the People's Temple, a charismatic preacher who slowly transformed his movement into a highly controlled cult. Let's not focus on his biography again and instead talk about the tragedy itself. In November 1978, U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan traveled to Guyana to investigate Jonestown after reports of abuse and people trying to escape. He arrived with a small delegation, journalists and relatives of temple members. When Ryan and several members of his delegation attempted to leave, they were ambushed and killed at a nearby airstrip by cult members following Jones's orders. Shortly after this, inside Jonestown itself, Jones initiated what he called a revolutionary leaving of life. He instructed his followers to drink a poison mixture of Flavor Aid, which contains cyanide and other toxic substances. Jones had his bodyguards pointing their guns at the temple members. He set things up so the children drank the poison first. Once the children were gone, it was a powerful incentive for their devastated parents to give up and submit to drinking the poison. They felt like there was nothing left to live for, so it became a choice between dying by poison or a gunshot. There are also accounts of Jones's most loyal followers going from body to body and injecting them with poison just to take care of people who might have been playing dead. Over 900 people died that day, including a large number of children. The tragedy ended with Jonestown completely destroyed, leaving behind one of the most shocking mass death events of the 20th century, preserved through disturbing audio recordings and fragmented footage that the documentaries show. Absolutely horrific, and this documentary is one of the best at covering this case. Now, let's take a look at what remains relevant to this day, rather than the terrifying tragedies of the past. Number 7. Channel 5, Vegas Tunnels. This episode from Channel 5, hosted by Andrew Callahan, explores one of the most unusual and hidden parts of Las Vegas, the underground tunnel system beneath the city. I believe almost everyone has heard something about these tunnels, but this particular work offers one of the most complete and vivid portrayals of the people living there. By the way, I know Andrew Callahan is a controversial figure. However, in this segment, we will focus specifically on the film and the situation in Las Vegas, and we will skip any scandals related to the host. In the gambling capital of the world, right beneath the feet of wealthy visitors and ordinary passersby, there exists a hidden community of people who, for one reason or another, were unable to find their place above ground. While millions of dollars are spent every day on gambling and entertainment, these people are facing conditions where every rainfall could be their last. What makes this work stand out from many other documentaries or videos is that Andrew Callahan tries to help and focuses on the people. He attempts to understand their problems, spends time with them, and tries to help, even staying overnight, while presenting the harsh reality they face every day. He also shows former tunnel residents who manage to turn their lives around and overcome addiction, while speaking more broadly about the nature of addiction itself. This film, like the entire situation, is a perfect example of contrast. It makes you laugh where you probably shouldn't, and shows hope in places where it almost seems impossible. Unfortunately, as of 2026, the situation has not changed much. According to some estimates, between 1,000 and 2,000 people are still living in the Las Vegas tunnels. The conditions remain just as terrible, and the stories filmed by other bloggers are horrifying in their nature. If you know more about this place from personal experience, if you have been there, for example, feel free to share what you think about the Channel 5 documentary and the real situation there.
Everybody's got a name, and everybody plays the game.
Number 6. Zoo, 2006. Zoo 2006 is a documentary that explores one of the most disturbing and controversial real-life cases in recent history, often referred to as the Enumclaw incident. The film follows a small group of men who lived seemingly normal lives, while secretly engaging in highly taboo and illegal behavior in rural Washington. The case became widely known after a fatal incident involving one of the participants, which ultimately brought the entire underground scene to light. If you still wonder what they are doing it with horses. One of them died from horse after the process done. Hope no more details needed. It explores a highly divisive subject from an almost amoral perspective. It's up to you, the viewer, to decide how you feel about the men's behavior. Is it wrong? And within the broader context of human behavior throughout history, how wrong is it, really? In fact, much of the film consists of quiet, lingering shots, which can make it difficult to watch for some viewers. It can even look like a low-budget documentary. But anyway, at least it is not try to shock, but instead presents the people involved in a detached and almost uncomfortable way, forcing the viewer to form their own opinion. There is a constant sense of tension and unease, and even the interviews feel distant, with subjects often avoiding direct eye contact. Some consider it a deeply unsettling and well-crafted exploration of a taboo subject, while others see it as slow, inaccessible, and poorly paced despite its disturbing premise. If you've watched this movie, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Number 5. White Light, Black Rain, 2007. If we are talking about films about the atomic bomb, I usually think of Threads, which for many people is one of the most powerful reminders of why humanity should never play with weapons of mass destruction. However, when it comes to documentaries, my personal number 1 is White Light, Black Rain, film that genuinely left me with a deep sense of anxiety after watching it. When it comes to nuclear war, and the bombing of Japan in 1945, people argue endlessly. It's impossible not to mention war crimes like Unit 731, the Bataan Death March, the Manila Massacre, or the Nanjing. Whether it was necessary, whether it helped end the war faster, or whether it was simply an unnecessary demonstration of power. But honestly, these debates never really end. We're here to understand the consequences, and to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Unlike Hiroshima 2005, this film goes much further. It includes survivor testimonies and archival footage that is extremely hard to find anywhere else. Not stylized, not recreated. Everything is real and very disturbing. To make it even more powerful, this film also includes interviews with people connected to the operation itself, including members of the crews involved in delivering the bombs. These moments don't feel heroic or cinematic. Instead, they feel heavy, reflective, and deeply uncomfortable. The film doesn't try to argue or convince you of a specific moral position. It simply presents what happened and forces you to sit with it. The stories of the survivors are what really hit the hardest. Everything about it is deeply disturbing, so be prepared for what you're going to hear and see. Number 4. Earthlings, 2005. Long before his iconic role as Joker, Joaquin Phoenix was already recognized for his incredible performances in films like Gladiator. However, what many people might not know is that Joaquin Phoenix has been a vegetarian since the age of 3 and is now one of the most outspoken animal rights activists in Hollywood. Even though the documentary Earthlings was released back in 2005, as of 2026, he still maintains his vegetarian lifestyle and continues to stand by his beliefs, unlike many others in the industry. Respect where it's due, especially when you've seen how often public figures switch their positions when it's convenient. So, in 2005, Sean Monson, together with a rising star in the form of Joaquin Phoenix, gave the world an incredibly heavy but necessary documentary, which I believe all civilized parts of humanity should watch, no matter what your position is on it. For example, I still eat meat, even after watching the even more intense Dominion, which we talked about in the last video. Anyway, my point is that you need to understand how meat actually ends up on your plate. No more discussion. Let me tell you more about the movie itself. The term Earthling itself carries no discrimination based on race, gender, or species. It includes all of us who live on planet Earth. Fish, birds, warm-blooded mammals, vertebrates and invertebrates. Humans are not the only beings sharing this planet, yet we are the only ones who constantly seek to dominate and control it. The film begins exactly with this idea, presenting discrimination not based on skin color or belief, but on species. It raises questions about suffering and compassion toward other living beings, something we often fail to extend beyond our own kind. Earthlings reveals the hidden reality of how animals are treated within human systems, in industries such as food production, clothing, entertainment, and scientific testing. That is exactly why this film is so disturbing, because it shows both footage of violence and almost completely exposes how we treat animals, revealing all the horrors of the livestock industry that ordinary people neither see nor even hear about. I won't go into more detail, I think it's already clear what I mean. I'll just add that, unlike Dominion, this film is more philosophical, but it is no easier to watch. It is also a cult documentary and caused quite a lot of controversy and attention when it was released. In the end, I will warn you once again, this film can truly change your life, so be careful before you look behind the mirror of that delicious meat on your white plate. Number 3. Children Underground, 2001. Children Underground is a documentary set in post-communist Bucharest following a group of homeless children living in subway tunnels beneath the city. When I say living, I mean surviving. The film focuses on a small group: Christina, Macarena, Mihai, Anna, and Marian. All of them ended up here for different reasons, but most of those reasons trace back to one thing: the policies of Nicolae Ceausescu, a brutal dictator whose ban on abortion and contraception led to thousands of unwanted children. Many were sent to orphanages, many ran away, and some ended up underground. These kids formed small, fragile families just to survive, but their reality is brutal. They beg, steal, and constantly face violence, not only from the outside world, but from each other. One of the most disturbing elements in the film is their addiction to inhalants, especially toxic metallic paint known as Aurolac. It destroys their lungs, leaves them in a constant daze, and slowly erases their sense of reality. According to aid organizations, once a child has lived like this for too long, especially with drug addiction, bringing them back is almost impossible. Christina, the oldest in the group, acts like a leader. She cuts her hair short and tries to pass as a boy just to avoid sexual violence. Mihai is different. He still has some kind of hope left. He wants to go to school, get a job, and live a normal life. But when he actually gets a chance to go back home, he's too afraid to take it. The most unsettling part of this film, and what shocked me the most, is that the camera shows everything, but never helps. Which raises a question that the film doesn't answer. Why didn't anyone step in, even the people filming it? The director, Edith Belzberg, later said that choosing not to intervene was one of the hardest decisions she had to make. How many children like this were left behind, and still are? Because according to some estimates, after the fall of communism, tens of thousands of children ended up living on the streets in Romania. And this film shows just 5 of them. This question is all you're left with after this nightmare experience. You can find this documentary on YouTube. Number 2, The Dying Rooms, 1995. The Dying Rooms is a 1995 documentary that investigates claims about Chinese state-run orphanages during the 1990s, focusing on allegations of extreme neglect, abandonment, and the poor treatment of children. Throughout the documentary, the filmmakers visit multiple institutions and show extremely harsh conditions: overcrowding, lack of medical attention, and children left in severe neglect. The emotional impact comes not from narration, but from the direct footage of children living in these environments. However, the documentary itself has remained controversial for years. Some viewers and critics argue that the film is emotionally powerful, but also somewhat misleading in its framing. According to Wiki, 2 Irish aid coordinators for the charity traveled to China to visit the orphanages and reported that the claims in the dying rooms were wholly exaggerated and almost completely without substance. I don't see it that way, and I also believe these conditions could simply have been moved or hidden after the attention and controversy. Anyway, even critics of this film agree that what is shown is absolutely inhumane and terrifying. The overall impact of the film is significant. It sparked international discussion about child welfare and institutional care, and pushed attention toward reforms and improvements in orphanage conditions over time. So, what do we have today in 2026? Today, China is significantly more developed economically than it was in 1995, and orphan care systems have generally improved compared to the conditions shown in the film. International adoptions, domestic child welfare programs, and government funding for orphanages have all expanded over time. However, the broader issue of abandoned children has not disappeared entirely. It has simply changed form. Reports and modern observations suggest that conditions vary heavily depending on region, funding, and type of institution. In some areas, care standards have improved a lot, while in others, challenges like overcrowding, disability care, and social stigma still exist. That is what I found. So if you know more about it, please share your thoughts. Number 1. The Look of Silence, 2014. At number 1, we have a truly horrifying and at the same time beautiful film by Joshua Oppenheimer, which serves as a natural continuation of one of the most powerful documentaries about the nature of evil, the act of killing. Unlike the first part, where the director and former perpetrators of the regime openly reenacted and reflected on their past atrocities, The Look of Silence follows a very different and much more personal perspective. The film centers around Adi Rukun, a man whose brother was killed during the Indonesian genocide of communists in 1965. Years later, he decides to confront the people who were directly involved in the killings of his family and his community. Moreover, looking ahead, he even manages to learn about his brother's final hours and what he went through before his death. It is horrifying, painful, and I can't even imagine Adi's feelings. In a deeply unsettling and emotional journey, he meets former perpetrators under the guise of an eye examination, slowly revealing who he is and why he is there. The film shows how propaganda and the rewriting of history can shape a one-sided version of events, where truth is distorted and past crimes are normalized. It presents former perpetrators who now live comfortably and are even willing to smile on camera while speaking about horrific things they did in the past. Despite all of this, the hardest part to watch is not their stories, but Adi's reactions. I want to mention that he is an incredibly brave and perceptive person. Many of the former perpetrators live in a kind of delusion. Some seem mentally detached, some show little signs of remorse, and some remain unchanged to the very end. Just to understand, some former executioners drank the blood of their victims because they believed it would prevent them from going mad if they didn't. The moment when the daughter of one of them says, "Maybe that is why he is still strong in his 90s, left me speechless. The scene where Adi tests glasses for the man who once drank blood and took part in horrific killings is absolutely astonishing. No extra words needed, just go and watch The Look of Silence. I still consider Joshua Oppenheimer one of the best documentary filmmakers of all time. As a closing note to this video, I wanted to share an important realization with you. In the pursuit of a better tomorrow, or in an attempt to escape an uncomfortable past, we often forget that we only exist in the present. Try to remember this more often and be active here and now. Find within yourself the strength for compassion. Don't compete with others, and not even with yourself. Just try to do your best in the present moment. Be adaptive, and don't let the difficulties on your path limit you in life. Honestly, when you clicked on this video, did you expect to hear a motivational speech? If I managed to surprise you, and if you have something to recommend or share, leave a like, subscribe, and definitely drop a comment with your favorite disturbing documentaries. I read all the comments, and a big part of this video is based on what you share with me. Well then, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. All the best, and see you in the next video.